For 15 of those years, I was a hiring manager.
What are some examples of candidates really impressing you?
There's 5 C's to getting prepared.
Okay.
It's the company, the competitors, customers.
Okay. Welcome, friends. In this career growth episode, we are here with Jonathan Corrales, a great guy I've met on LinkedIn in the past couple of months. He has about 20 years of experience in the US tech market, from software engineering all the way to program management. And he's been both an interviewer and hiring manager, as well as now an interview coach to help people progress in their tech careers. So, Jonathan, great to have you here, man. Thanks for
Yeah,
your
thanks,
time.
Grant. Pleasure to be here, man.
Absolutely. Can you share a little bit more about your background in tech?
Yeah, sure. So I started off my career as a software developer, did that for a little over a decade, and then got an opportunity to lead a team. Um, and then I stuck with it. So for the last 20 years, I've played all sorts of roles in software, everything from software developer all the way to program manager. And for 15 of those years, I was a hiring manager. And I know what it's like to go through the process as a candidate, but also be on the other end where we're evaluating candidates, trying to determine who we're actually going to extend an offer to.
Hmm.
So I thought I could bring that to the table. There's so many people that have been impacted by the layoffs, especially a lot of my friends.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what turned me into a coach.
That is awesome, man. So let's talk about your experience as a hiring manager, especially when it comes to hiring non-native candidates, as that's a majority of my audience.
Yeah,
And in my coaching, many non-native English speakers, they're so concerned about their English ability, about will the interviewer understand me? Am I making mistakes? Is this the right vocabulary word?
hmm,
What's been your experience interviewing and evaluating non-native English speakers on their language abilities?
that's a great question. I mean, in every interview, we're always looking for technical ability, which is number one, and especially in
Sure,
the
sure.
tech space, right?
Hmm.
We're also looking for the ability to communicate clearly. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you can't have an accent. That doesn't mean that you have to know all the terminology, right, or anything like
Sure,
that.
sure.
It just means we need to be able to understand what you're saying at any point in time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's the thing that I think a lot of foreign nationals, foreign workers, people on visas and things like that, they're kind of worried about, they're concerned about.
Yes.
I actually had a question from a job seeker recently, and he asked if he was going to run into any discrimination issues because of where he's from,
Mm.
right? And so it's a very real concern that people have today. But as long as we understand what you're saying, you're gonna be okay.
Completely agree. Yeah, yeah. In the market I work with, Koreans trying to get into English speaking countries, they sometimes approach interviews as if they're English exams.
Mm,
They're trying to use the most advanced vocabulary, the longest
yes,
sentences possible, and
yes,
that very often has the opposite effect of what you'd want. Always go for clarity over complexity.
that's right.
Completely agree.
I agree. Yeah, it's better to be clear than it is to be clever.
Totally, totally.
Yes,
Yeah. So you did mention technical skills are number one.
yes,
Totally agree with you. How
absolutely.
can candidates best show their technical abilities in interviews?
That's a really good question. Actually, when most candidates are preparing for their interviews, they focus exclusively on the technical part. But what they
Okay.
forget is that the soft skills matter too.
Okay.
Yeah. You can't show that you're capable without using your communication skills.
True. True.
So everyone talks about the STAR method. What the STAR method does is it organizes your thoughts so that you have a beginning, middle, and an end.
Sure.
You
Sure.
start with the situation and you end with the result.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's to keep people from rambling, right?
Hmm.
That's to keep
Hmm.
people on target. So checking in with your interviewer and making sure that you're answering the question is also part of that method. So if someone were to
Hmm.
ask me a question, let's say, tell me about a time you had a conflict, I would first repeat the question to them and I'd say, so you want me to tell you about a time I had a conflict? They would say yes. Now we're in a conversation. I go through my
Yeah.
star
Yeah.
story, and then at the end I would ask, does that answer your question? to keep it more of a conversation rather
Hmm.
than a question and answer session.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be you going on for 5 minutes without the interviewer saying a single word. You
that's
can
right.
check that they're following what you're saying. You can ask, is this similar to the type of projects I'd be working on here? Stuff like that. Make it a little bit more back
Exactly.
and forth.
Exactly right. Yeah. If you go on for 5 minutes and the interviewer is just sitting there, they're going to think about what happened in the morning or what's going to happen after the interview. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want that. We want them to continuously check in with us. And we do that by asking questions.
Love that. Love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, if you go on for that 5 minutes, if they miss something in minute two, they might not be able to understand minute three, four, and five
That's right.
because they missed that important detail.
Exactly. But if you're checking in with them every
Then
so
you know.
often, then you know. Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, how about some examples? Thinking back to your time as a hiring manager, what are some examples of candidates really impressing you? What did they do in an interview to stand out and earn an offer?
So I remember this one person who called in. It was a phone screen. I called him actually, and I asked him, "Why do you want to work here?"
Hmm.
And rather than say, "Oh, I want to work here because," and then read like the headline of the website,
Sure.
they told me exactly the kinds of projects that we had. Like they looked at the portfolio that we have, they looked at news articles, and so they told me about specific projects they wanted to work on. That was impressive because I knew that that person
Mhm.
did their homework and they weren't just like
Mhm.
randomly applying to things. There was a very specific response. I like to this day, I still remember that conversation.
That is awesome. Yeah. And
Yeah,
what they said, it was 100% unique to your company. It couldn't be the same answer for anyone
that's
else
right.
in your industry.
That's right. Yeah, because at the time I was working at the University of Maryland and we were building a bunch of transportation tools. And he said
Mhm.
something that stuck out to me. And he said, because we had this like first responder training app, and he said, "Oh, I'd really like to work on that because I care about road safety," something along those
Oh,
lines.
that is
And it
awesome.
just stuck with me. And I was like, "This is the guy. We got to bring him in."
Mhm.
I don't think he did well in the technical, but soft skill wise, he was perfect.
Mhm. Yeah. Especially when I imagine a lot of the other candidates gave very generic answers to that question.
That's right. Yeah, most people say, "Well, I want to lead a team. I'd love to like explore my ideas, something like that." They don't
Mhm.
really talk about what it is that the company or organization is doing,
Mhm.
and they don't
Mhm.
pitch themselves either. They don't tell us like why that person, why they're worth, 6 figures or whatever it is that we're paying.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. Yeah. So we're kind of segueing into this now, but what are some bad examples? What are things candidates did in interviews that, in your mind, just totally ruined their chances?
Yes. So not being prepared for that phone screen, I mean, it's scheduled in advance, it's
Oh
coming.
yeah, yeah.
If you're just reading the website, right, like a few minutes before the phone screen, you're probably not going to do well
Mm,
on the phone screen.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So winging it in the interview is not a winning strategy at all. So I have a
Mhm,
couple of
mhm.
examples of that. One other thing that happens is people are sending out their applications, like their cover letters and all that, and it's addressed to a different company.
Oh yeah.
That's a red flag. That gets you
Hmm.
rejected almost
Hmm.
automatically.
I'm cringing because I did that one time.
Yeah.
I
Haven't we
realized
all?
it. I realized it a couple minutes after sending the email, and oh no, yeah. Please double check the title, double check the uh the PDF file name before you click send.
Yeah, always. Always.
So more thinking more big picture, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice or the most important tip for non-native speakers trying to get into tech, especially maybe in the US?
Yeah, I got a good one. So try to remember what the terminology is both in your language and in English. So for example,
Okay.
database in Spanish would be base de datos, but in
Hmm.
English it's database.
Hmm.
You have to know what those terms are, right? Because what
Hmm.
I've noticed is that sometimes when you're interviewing someone that has English as a second language, they understand the concept, they understand what you're trying to say, or like what you're asking and what they're trying to say, but they don't have the words, the vocabulary. So if
Mhm.
nothing else, study the vocabulary in your specific area and make sure you know what that is. That is that's key to any interview, whether you're a native English speaker or English is your second language.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Don't mix up the terminology.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, very, very true. Awesome. Maybe not just for non-native speakers, but for anyone approaching a big tech interview, what do you think is a key or your biggest piece of advice?
Yeah, so anyone approaching that from that angle, I would say definitely do your homework. I like to say that there's 5 C's to getting prepared.
Okay.
It's the company, the competitors, customers, the culture, and consumer products. If you know those 5 things and you've studied them, you're going to do fantastic on your interview. I promise.
I love that. Yeah, yeah. And something that I've noticed as a theme in what you're saying is the candidates that really understand the company and show their work ethic through their preparation, that can sometimes overcome maybe not checking 100% of the boxes in terms of their background.
Totally. Totally. In fact, when interviewers are scoring candidates, typically, if they don't have it like written out in like a matrix,
Mhm.
they'll have in their, at least in their mind, a score for their communication skills, a score for their preparation, a score for
Mm,
tech. The technical part, that's just a portion of the whole pie. So
sure,
you
sure.
should focus on that. It is important, but also focus on your soft skills. Very important.
Love that. Yeah, that is so true. So, Jonathan, you're now doing interview coaching. Can you share a little bit more about what you do and maybe how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So I have a program that I've developed. I call it the Tech Offer Accelerator. And basically, I walk candidates through the entire process, like preparing their branding, their LinkedIn profile, their resume, their cover letter. I help them develop their stories for behavioral interviews. I help them prepare for technical interviews, giving them a structured problem solving approach. I help them network. And I work with them all the way from the moment that we start till they get an offer. So if that's a month, it's a month.
Mm.
If it's 6 months, it's 6 months. I'm working with them the entire time. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I've been doing it now for 9 months, and it's fantastic. I got some great wins, and I'm very excited about it.
That is fantastic. I love that. I will work with you until you get an offer.
That's right.
That's got to be very reassuring for people.
It certainly is, and I actually had a person reach out to me recently, and she said, "Thank you for all your support. I felt like I wasn't alone," and
Mhm,
that
mhm.
that touched me. That makes me emotional.
Love that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
for me, moments like that are what makes it the most fulfilling, for sure.
yeah. Me too. Um, and then you can find me on LinkedIn. It's in/Jonathan, JONATHAN. My last name, which is CORRALES, no space, no special characters. Connect with me, drop me a line, and I'd love to say hi.
Absolutely. I will put links to Jonathan's program and his LinkedIn somewhere in the comments or description of this video.
I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Jonathan.
Yeah, not a problem. My pleasure. Thanks, Grant.